What is up, Renaissance crew? I am Devon DaVinci, and thank you for tuning in to DaVinci Reacts. Now, this is a continuation to a video that I recently did. It was a video over on Alternate History Hub. I keep mixing up alternate and alternative. It's Alternate History Hub, and they're doing it says 4-part series. I haven't been able to find the 4th video. I might have to search for it specifically. I don't see any links to it from these two channels, but this is a cross-promotion series that Alternate History Hub did with EmperorTigerstar, and this video is called An Alternative World, or why do I keep mixing those two words up? An Alternate World of a Southern Victory. So pretty much it's talking about a what-if scenario in the event that the South had won the Civil War, what it would have been like. Like I said, I've already done part 1. You will see a card somewhere over here pop up, and it'll show you, you click on it, it'll take you to the link to the first video that I reacted to. And I will have a link for the original video in the description box down below. Like I said, if you enjoy these people's videos, the best way you can support them is to watch their original content. If you feel like you don't want to watch the video twice or whatever, like I said, right click the link in the description box, open it in a new window, click the mute button and let it play in the background while this video is going on. By the time it ends, you will have given them a view, and that's all that really matters. So show support any possible way that you can, and there will be a link for the original channel at the end of this video, somewhere around here. So be sure to be on the lookout for that also. Let's check this out, see what it has to offer, and see how wild it gets, because I think right now we're pushing into we've already done the Industrial Revolution. This is probably pushing in towards the World Wars. Let's get it.
Jeez, this solid gray background has as dull as...
Hey Cody, glad you can make it.
Yeah, so did you tell the viewers this is only part 2 of 4?
This is
I
my
figured
water.
the title made that obvious.
Oh, silly, smaller channel, so blissfully ignorant of protocol.
My channel was around before yours.
Part 1 of this alternate history timeline is on a video on my channel, which is linked in the description. There will also be a part 3 on my channel, with part 4 back on this channel.
Yep. Anywho, so last time, to sum things up, the South broke away, they took Cuba, most of northern Mexico, causing a second...
Don't give too much away, buddy.
So the next 3 books are set almost 2 generations later, after the last book. The United States has now lost 2 wars against the South, and they're as bitter as ever. The entangling alliances that led up to World War I in our timeline still exist here, except now they include the United States as the central power and the Confederacy as an ally of Britain and France.
Crazy, right?
We start with the outbreak of World War I, and so naturally the USA and CSA get dragged in.
All right, I'm gonna pause it for just a second. It's interesting that the Confederates are part of the Allies and the North is part of the Confederacy, because based on the fact that they broke off because they wanted to keep slavery, and by this point in the story, slavery is already ended. So just want to clarify that. But it kind of takes away from the moral high ground that the Allies had when it came to the World War II. Like, part of it was that what Hitler was doing was so heinous that it was almost like good guy versus bad guy. Even though you can debate about the Russians and some decisions that the United States made. For the most part, people tend to look at World War II as good guys versus bad guys.
By the way, the US president is Theodore Roosevelt, who's a Democrat. Since both presidents who fought the South and lost were Republicans, the Republican Party has become a minor party, and the Democrats have essentially won every single presidency up to this point.
Because the Republicans
so far, although that
got their
change
big
in part 3.
behind.
The Confederate president is Woodrow Wilson.
The Republicans got their big build-up from Abraham Lincoln and his victory. So if Abraham Lincoln had lost the Civil War, then yeah, the Republican Party probably would be, if not like a shadow of what they would become in the real timeline, but they'd be small, almost like third party small. Somebody else I think would probably take their place, to tell the truth.
The Confederate president is Woodrow Wilson, who's a Whig. Yes, the Whigs are back, except this time in the South. And similar to the Democrats in the North, the Whigs are dominating the Confederacy. What's life in the South like in the 1910s? Well, the slaves have been free for a long time, but are essentially still slaves in everything but name. They're still not treated like humans with rights, and they're not happy about it. Which is an important detail because that'll come back later. As for the North, the amount of bitterness is high. The anniversary of their defeat back in the Second Mexican War was a yearly event of remembrance. They wanted vengeance, once and for all, so naturally they were eager to get the Great War started. However, the South ended up launching the first offensive. They tried to imitate Robert E. Lee and capture Philadelphia like how they won independence back in 1862, except naturally, the trench warfare kind of makes that a bit hard, and the trench warfare is everywhere because it's World War I. When the US forces tried to invade Confederate-held Kentucky, again, trench warfare makes it kind of a nightmare. However, to make matters worse, the US also has to deal with British Canada up north. Along that border, which has essentially been fortified, the fighting is a bit more sporadic, but the US eventually breaks through and captures most important Canadian towns along the border. In Europe, the war goes the exact same, because we didn't enter World War I in our timeline until 1917. But what happens when we get to 1917? Well, truth be told, the US entered the war at a good time in our timeline. French troops in 1917 began a few mutinies, and there were huge worries that France would drop out if the soldiers would refuse to fight. Luckily, American intervention calmed them down as finally they were going to have the manpower to push forward. Here? Well, the US certainly isn't coming. The CSA did not send any forces either because they have to deal with the United States invading their country. So the mutinies in this timeline become so great that France simply can't take it anymore and agrees to make peace with the Central Powers. Russia, like in our timeline, drops out because of the Russian Revolution, and so Britain and the Confederacy are the only ones left. However, eventually the US breaks through Confederate defenses. Why? Well, George Armstrong Custer. Yes, Custer. Due to the US going AWOL against the Native Americans after they lost against the South, after all, they did not want to have to deal with another.
I was about to say, don't search for Custer's Revenge or Custer related video games. Some of those results may scar you.
Custer. Yes, Custer. Due to the US going AWOL against the Native Americans after they lost against the South, after all, they did not want to have to deal with another enemy. There was never a Battle of Little Bighorn. Custer lived and remained in the army since then. He was around in the original Southern War of Independence and was now an old man who had become an armchair general. But he also helped come up with a new revolutionary device. Custer was a cavalryman and wanted to find a way to combine cavalry and artillery. He came up with a barrel. You all know this device as a tank.
Okay,
That name was given because the British called their device a tank to fool the Germans into thinking it was a device that held water. Here, the Americans invented first, and they have the same general idea, but the American name for a giant container of water is a barrel.
That's actually very interesting. I did not know that at all. So, because I was actually looking at a lot of comments, and I asked you guys if the Sherman tank was named after General Sherman from the American Civil War, and a lot of you told me that the UK did in fact name the tank after him, as well as some other generals. And well, a follow-up question to that is, why exactly did they choose an American general? And also, I didn't really know that England was the one that pretty much created that stuff. Which is interesting. I should have known, because England was one of the pioneering forces behind the Industrial Revolution, and I imagine tanks are a byproduct of that revolution, so it would make sense that they'd be the first to create it. But yeah, they named a tank after a container of water. Was it really to fool the enemy, or was it just because of a look? Because I can imagine, why would Germany think they're attacking them with tank? They thought they were going to flood them. I'm kind of confused right now. So somebody in the comment section have to let me know exactly what the purpose behind the tank name was. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Maybe he'll further explain that.
Have the same general idea, but the American name for a giant container of water is a barrel, not a tank. So that's the proper name for this vehicle from now on. These barrels' firepower, along with cavalry-style tactics, would be what breaks the Confederate front lines, and the US advances all around. They gain ground in Sonora, Sequoia, West Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, and even penetrate past Kentucky and down into Tennessee. How could it possibly get worse? Remember those not slaves yet totally slaves I mentioned earlier? With the military effort of the Confederacy collapsing, they took advantage of this. They rebelled. To make matters more frightening for the South, the philosophies of Karl Marx had much influence on the disgruntled African American population. So they rose up and declared several independent socialist republics. The Confederacy was able to suppress all these efforts after around 2 years, but that cost them essential military men, supplies, and time that could have been used to try and stop the US from advancing further. Because of this, the Confederacy, and also eventually the UK, can no longer fight and are forced to make peace. The Central Powers have won World War I. While the war takes up most of the story here, the peace treaty is the most important part. The US had finally won against their rival in the South. Their hunger for revenge was about to be satisfied. What were they going to do? Well, you know how the Treaty of Versailles essentially did all it could to humiliate and destroy the spirit of Germany after World War I? Imagine that, but for the Allies. So let's do this one by one. France. They lost a few colonies to Germany, and more land from Alsace and Lorraine to Germany. They didn't really need anything else though. Germany had humiliated them for the second time in 50 years, that was good enough. Russia. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed just like in our timeline, where they lost huge chunks of land. Except this time, since Germany won World War I, it stays in place. So now Germany and Austria-Hungary dominate Eastern Europe. The Bolsheviks are also not a thing. The Germans don't want to deal with that, so they actually use their troops there to help the Russian monarchists kill off the Bolshevik forces. Now Russia itself was practically dependent on Germany.
Wow.
Britain. They lost a few colonies to the European Central Powers, but for the United States, they lost more. Way more. The US was not happy about how the British twice stopped them from being the South. So they take Hawaii from them, and the Bahamas, and Bermuda, and the biggest prize of all, British Canada.
Oof.
Wait a minute, you may ask. All of Canada? That's a bit much, don't you think? Actually, it's not. Canada wasn't really developed much past the southern border area, other than the occasional town and railroad. The US during the war captured nearly all of these important areas. What use would Britain have for the rest of it? Even with the resources there, without these southern areas, they couldn't sustain a colony here. So now all of it is under US military occupation, except for Quebec. In order to relieve some pressure on US occupation forces, the US gives Quebec independence as the Republic of Quebec. The Republic of Quebec is essentially an American puppet state. If any of you think this is cliche, it's really not. Quebec back then had a lot of separatist movements. They voted on it twice in the late 1900s even. So wow, the US got a lot from Britain. How about the South? Well, the South was humiliated. Any land they took during the war was essentially theirs by right of conquest. A chunk of Northern Virginia was given to West Virginia. Kentucky is taken back into the Union. Korea is under US occupation. Parts of Sonora are annexed to New Mexico. Western Texas is broken off, and it becomes the US state of Houston, even though Houston is not in Houston. Once again, good job with the naming. The South was definitely humiliated. One disgruntled soldier is horrified by this. He wants to bring back the South's glory.
And he is going to be the Hitler figure in all of this, I'm willing to bet. But what soldier would it be? I want to take a guess before it continues. Okay, a Southern famous military member. I can only imagine it's going to be one of the generals from World War II. I don't know exactly where they're from, so I can't say for sure, but it's either going to be like MacArthur, Patton.
One disgruntled soldier is horrified by this. He wants to bring back the South's glory. He's also mad at the African Americans who rebelled earlier, claiming that they stabbed the South in the back. He'll be back in the next set of books, ready to bring his mad visions to life. His name is Jake Featherston. Okay, sorry, I can never find that name intimidating, but you'll learn more about him in part 3.
I'm back.
Oh, hey,
I guess
how'd
they
you
made
enjoy
someone
part
up,
2?
Huh? What? Oh, yeah. Trenches.
He's the
and
Hitler
bullets and
figure, I'm
stuff.
willing to guarantee.
Anywho,
Next part is mine. Part 3 is back on my channel, coming about a week after this one.
does that mean...
We'll talk about it later.
Well, you heard it here, folks. This complex timeline continues. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to see more videos, and be sure to subscribe to Alternate History Hub so you can catch the next part and see his awesome videos over other alternate history timelines.
Yeah, I can't wait to check out the third part. This one went by so fast, I didn't realize that it was ending. I had to check the time to make sure, like, wait a minute, is it over already? But, yeah, like, it's amazing when you take one piece out of like a timeline and see how it changes, but then it's still so similar. Because, I mean, the fact that a Hitler figure popped up isn't surprising. I remember hearing about I forgot exactly how it went down, but I was either watching or reading something, and they talked about if World War I had been different, and like France, for example, was on the losing end, there would have been another Hitler-like figure that would have came up and, you know, rose to power, probably created a dictatorship and this, that, and the other. I forgot where I watched that, but it goes in line with this. Like, any country that gets completely humiliated, that was going to happen. I mean, the Treaty of Versailles, the fact that it was created to pretty much humiliate the losers, kind of created all the proper ingredients to create this figure. I don't want to say his name again because I'm afraid, like, YouTube only gives you so many uses and then your video gets messed up. But like, once that treaty was made, whoever was on the hardest hitting end of that treaty was going to be in an economic situation that was so dire that as soon as anybody with what's the term I want to use? Because I was thinking strongman mindset, but at the same time, it's like, I want to say it in a negative way. So anybody with a mindset of taking advantage of people's desperation, because when you're desperate, you're willing to do some crazy things, and anybody that's willing to come in there and take advantage of that would easily be able to gain power. And with the right influences, with the right techniques, strategies, they could easily become a dictator of some country, and everybody wouldn't question it, or at least early on, because, I mean, once you're at the dead bottom, there's no going below that. So it's like, all this person can do is go up. And they're willing to, you know, look over certain things if the outcome could possibly help out their situation. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Like I said, I will have a link for EmperorTigerstar's channel at the end of this video. There's the link for the original video in the description box down below. So if you haven't seen the original, show support, watch the video, or have it planned, whatever you got to do. And I will see you guys on the next video, which will be part 3 over on Alternate History Hub. I will do a reaction to that with the next batch of videos that come out. So that should be either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I am Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've just been a little more enlightened. I look forward to seeing you guys in a future video. I'm going to give you the deuces, and I'm signing out. Deuces.